Winter is my favorite time of year. I love the snow falling and the holiday spirit, making me happy all season long. I live in a cold state where it snows a lot in winter. I have been a DoorDash driver part-time for almost 3 years, and the snow makes my job harder because it takes a long time to clear the roads. Even when they do get cleared, the snow often covers them up again. Even though driving in heavy snow can be dangerous and sometimes hard, I usually still go out to work on those snowy days. The reason I drove in the snow was that no one else was on the road. Other DoorDash drivers would probably stay home, so I could get a lot more orders and make more money. Also, customers usually give bigger tips because they know it's hard to get deliveries during a snowstorm. That year was no different. In the middle of December, we had a heavy snowfall. I couldn't start delivering until 7 or 8 because of my other job, but as soon as I could, I hit the road. As usual, there were very few cars, and my DoorDash app was showing me lots of high-paying delivery offers. I did 2 quick deliveries and was heading back from my house when the snow got worse. I could barely see, and the roads weren't being cleared enough. My car was good. It had all-wheel drive and all-season tires, but the snow made it hard to drive. I slowed down at a stop sign, and my tires spun when I tried to go again. After I finally got through the intersection, a new order showed up on my phone. I thought about it for a moment, but decided to reject it and close the app. The roads were too dangerous for me to drive on. The street I was on was close to the main town, so I tried to get as close as I could, hoping the snowplows had cleared the roads there. I drove slowly, going only 20 in a 45 zone. As I drove through the bad conditions, I suddenly saw something big in the road ahead of me. I couldn't see it until it was too late, so I slammed on the brakes. My car stopped in time, but the back tires slid and pulled my car off the road into a deep pile of snow. Luckily, it was a slow crash, but it didn't help my situation. My car was completely stuck in the snow, and I knew I needed help. I took a moment to calm down, then turned on my hazard lights and called for roadside help. I told the man where I was, and he said it would take about 15 to 20 minutes for him to get there. I was glad and thanked him. As I relaxed in my seat, I felt relieved that I hadn't accepted any orders, because that would have made things much more complicated. I sat there for a few minutes, watching the snow fall, when I noticed a flickering light in my side mirror. It was hard to see, but I realized it was an orange light flashing and coming toward me. When it got closer and parked behind me, I saw it was a work vehicle with caution lights on top. I checked my phone and saw it had only been 4 minutes since I called, so the guy was early. I wasn't going to complain about someone coming early to help me get out of the ditch. After waiting in my car for a few more minutes, I heard a door slam behind me and saw a man walking toward my window. When he got a few feet away, I rolled the window down a little. "Hi, sir. Do you need help?" he asked. "Yeah, I called a few minutes ago. I just need help getting back on the road," I replied, even though it felt a bit strange to explain since the situation was pretty clear. "Okay, let me see what I can do for you," the man said as he walked to the back of my car to check it out. I had never done this before, but I thought they would attach a winch to my car and pull me out. I didn't know where they attached it or if that was really how it works. I watched him in the rearview mirror as he stood behind the car for a bit, and then a rush of cold air came in when he opened the trunk. I looked back and saw him holding the trunk half open while he looked inside my car. "Sorry," he mumbled as he slammed the trunk shut. I wasn't sure how this process worked, but it was strange that he opened my trunk like that. I couldn't think of a reason he would need to do it. My suspicions grew as I noticed he seemed confused, and I started to put things together. I quickly called the roadside assistance number again. After a few rings, the same man from before answered, and I felt my stomach drop. "Hey, I'm just a couple of minutes away. Did you need anything else?" Just then, the guy walked back to my window and said he needed my keys and for me to get out of the car for a minute while he got it ready. I kept the phone by my ear and awkwardly told him I just needed a minute because I was on the phone. He didn't say anything but just stood there, looking at me like he wanted to hear my conversation. I was doing my best not to panic with the guy still next to my door. I rolled the window up, and he immediately started knocking on the window, asking me what I was doing in a mean way. I locked the doors, and when he heard that, he tried to pull my door open and started yelling at me. I was scared because I knew I couldn't go anywhere. While this was happening, I heard another door slam from the truck behind me and saw another man running toward my car with something in his hand. Suddenly, a very loud horn honked behind us, and bright lights shone on my car. The two men ran back to their truck and drove away, showing the roadside assistance truck. Two new men got out and came up to check if I was okay. I had accidentally left the call on, and the men heard what was happening, so they rushed to help me after calling the police. I learned that there were many cases like mine during heavy snowfall. The men were said to drive around looking for people who were stuck, then steal their cars and rob them while pretending to be roadside assistants. I wouldn't be surprised if they were the ones who put that big object in the road that made me swerve and slide off. I'm lucky things turned out the way they did, and I don't think I'll ever drive in bad weather again. When I was younger, my family and I would go ice fishing up north. My parents had friends with cabins in a very quiet place. There was a small gas station about a mile away, but it would take 20 to 30 minutes to find anything else. While we drove there, it started to snow, and I just wanted to get there and play games. It took us 8 hours to arrive, and we got there around 4 p.m. It was January, so the sun was already going down, and I was really tired. We parked at our cabin and started to unload. The cabins had smart locks, so we just needed a code to get the key to unlock the door. I picked up my backpack and suitcase and went to enter the code, but I saw some tracks in the snow leading to the door. I told my dad, and he said it was probably the cleaning person. I believed him and tried to open the door. When I walked inside, I saw some water on the floor, but I thought it was from the cleaning lady. Everything else looked fine in just how I remembered it. I went to my room, the one I always stayed in, and started to unpack. But when I went to close the blinds, I saw tracks in the snow again. They looked like they were coming from the woods toward our cabin, and since it had snowed, they had to be new. I told my dad, and he said he would check it out. By the time we finished unloading, the snow had changed from light to almost a blizzard. My dad said if anyone was out there, they were probably gone now if they were smart. He made spaghettis for my mom and me, and we watched a movie before I went to bed. A few hours later, I woke up to thumping on the wall that sounded like it was coming from outside my window. I tried to go back to sleep, but it happened a few more times. I wasn't really scared, just annoyed. I got up and looked outside but didn't see anything. The snow had stopped a bit so I could see better, but I noticed the tracks again almost in the same spot as before, coming from the woods. I made sure the windows were locked before going back to bed since I couldn't really do anything about it. The next day, I told my dad about the tracks, but he didn't seem to believe me at first. We went outside together, and sure enough, we found human footprints. They went from the woods to our cabin, right up to my bedroom window, then to the front door and back to the woods. We had been there before, and we knew there was nothing around for miles, and no one really camps in the woods in winter. My dad called his friends to tell them, but there wasn't much they could do. After a few hours, though, they brought over some small cameras that plug into the wall. You could watch a live feed of what was happening at home. We set them up inside to help us feel safer. It was a bit of work, but it was better to be safe than sorry. A few hours later, we left for the lake, and my mom kept checking the cameras to make sure no one was inside the cabin. When we got to our fishing spot, we all left our phones in the car while we fished for a while. But when we got back to the car, my mom had a lot of notifications from the camera saying it sensed movement. My dad quickly called his friend to check the cabin or call the police. His friend stayed on the phone while going into the cabin with a gun. After a few minutes of silence, he said there was nothing there. I know he should have waited for the police, but my dad's friends are a bit different. He called the police anyway and explained what happened. We didn't get any video proof because the cheap cameras only showed live feeds and didn't save any footage. We stayed with my dad's friend for the next few nights, but kept the camera set up in the cabin. On the day we were leaving, the camera sensed movement again. My dad and his friend hurried over, but again, there was nothing inside. This time, though, there were tracks from the woods to the cabin, the same ones I had seen before. My dad thought about following the tracks, but my mom told him not to. It was really creepy to think that someone could have been inside while we were sleeping or watching us from the windows during the day. Luckily, nothing bad happened, but it was still one of the scariest experiences of my life. The next times we went up there, we stayed in a different cabin and nothing happened. My dad's friends said they never figured out what was going on, and I guess the person stopped coming after we left. My uncle gave me a chance to take care of his house while he went on a vacation in Europe with his family. My aunt and cousin had already left, but my uncle stayed behind to finish some work. Once he was done, he asked me to look after the house for a few weeks. He knew I really wanted to try living alone, so he let me have this chance for the first time. He told me I couldn't invite friends over or spend too much time in the yard. I didn't know why, but I guessed it was because of the deep snow outside, which might be dangerous. Before leaving, he gave me a lot of instructions on taking care of the house, filled the fridge with plenty of food, and then left. At first, I have to say things were even better than I thought they would be. I didn't feel weird being alone, and it was nice to have the freedom to do what I wanted. Everything was going great until one night a noise woke me up. I wasn't really scared, just surprised. I got up quickly and looked around. There was nothing, just the darkness in my uncle's room, lit up by the bright moonlight coming through the window. I looked out the window to see if it was snowing, and I was surprised to see a full blizzard outside. I just stared, not really knowing what was happening. Then I heard the same noise again, this time from the front door downstairs. My heart started beating faster. I thought maybe something had blown against the door, but I wasn't sure. I went downstairs, turning on all the lights as I went, and looked through the peephole on the front door. I didn't see anything, so I opened the door a little, trying not to let the cold and snow inside. To my shock, there were footsteps leading right up to the door. I quickly shut the door and locked it, breathing hard. Who would be outside in this weather? I whispered to myself, looking around the house, trying to decide what to do next. I ran to the back door and looked through the glass. It was so dark and snowy that I could only see a few feet away, but I thought I saw a small person walking away from the house. It looked like a kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old. The wind calmed down for a moment, and I could see more clearly there was definitely a kid walking outside near the house. I was scared but also worried about the little kid. I ran upstairs, got my phone, and called 911 to report the child near my house. I stayed by the back window, looking out into the snowy night to see if the kid would appear again, but he was gone. When the police arrived, I explained the situation in detail while we stood in the kitchen. Then we heard a soft knock at the front door. One of the officers told me to stay put while they both went to check who was there. When the officer opened the door, the same kid I had seen before was standing there. One officer brought him inside, looking worried since the boy was only wearing a light sweatshirt, not a warm jacket. The other officer went outside to check if anyone else was there, then came back in and closed the door behind him. The kid's face was hard to read. It looked completely blank. The officer asked him a lot of questions, like where his parents were and what he was doing, but the boy barely said anything and seemed confused, like he didn't really understand what was happening. It was strange to see this right in front of me, but it didn't feel real at all. What kind of kid walks around in a blizzard at night? Why did he knock on the door? Why was he alone and showing no expression? We didn't get any answers for weeks. By then, my uncle was back and didn't need me to watch the house anymore. The boy had said a few things to the investigators, including that my uncle's house was where he lived. But 2 weeks after I found him, another family recognized the boy as their missing child from months ago. Keeping up with this news made my head spin, and things just got weirder from there. Less than a month later, another missing kid was found sitting in the street in front of my uncle's house while he was on vacation again. They said there was no connection between the two missing kids, but it felt too much like a coincidence to me. It made me wonder about everything, why my uncle didn't want anyone over and told me to stay out of the yard. Was he hiding something? Why did he leave a few days after his family? Was he possibly keeping people somewhere? I knew I might be overthinking everything, but who knows? The police checked the house after the first boy was found, and my uncle cooperated with them. So it could just be a big coincidence that two missing kids were found outside his home, or maybe it's not a coincidence at all.